go to New York City. Yesterday, my husband and I took a little day trip to New York City, so I thought I'd film a mini vlog and take you along with me. Our favorite way to get to New York City is to take the Amtrak from here where we live in Virginia. If you get early morning tickets and evening tickets, the price can be incredibly cheap. The times that we opted for this time around ended up being about $100 both ways for each of us, which we paid for with our credit card points, so it's pretty cheap transportation, actually. You can get even cheaper by going earlier and leaving later, but we liked the hours that it left us. It dropped us in the city around 10 o'clock, and then we had to leave around 8 o'clock, which was the perfect amount of time to catch a show, do a little bit of sightseeing, grab some yummy food, and some delicious coffee, of course. All of the fun things. Of course, one of the fun things about New York City is being able to do a little shopping, even if it's just window shopping, which is honestly really all that I did. We went to a paper source shop that was actually still in the train station, and I don't have one of those near me as far as I know, and so I just had so much fun walking through that shop, definitely dragging my husband all the way through to look at all the fun things they had there. So let's take a look at what Paper Source had on offer. By this point in time, we were quite hungry. It was a great time for brunch, like around 11 o'clock-ish. So we went to a place near Lincoln Center Plaza called Old John's Luncheonette, which was like a diner type restaurant that had been opened in the 90s and seemed to be a favorite spot for locals primarily. We didn't see a lot of tourists there, and the prices were actually pretty reasonable for New York City, and the food was delicious. And of course, we must stop for coffee. I usually love to try local spots when I go to New York City. This time I went with a chain because the local spots that I was interested in were pretty far from where we were spending most of our time. And we probably would have had to take the subway up another stop to get to them. And I wanted to keep things simple and within walking distance for most of our day there. So I opted for a chain, which I do believe started in New York City, so at least it was a local chain. It has grown to the extent that there are locations in DC, not too far from me, but I've never been to those. This was my first time. Anyway, the chain is called Mama, and it has like a Southern French inspired kind of idea in the decor and the vibes, which is so fun. The coffee was delicious, and my favorite part was the cups they served it in. So after breakfast and coffee, we still had time to kill before our show. So we did a little bit of sightseeing directly across the street from the Lincoln Center Plaza where the show was going to be, was the American Fine Art Museum. And it's free, so that was a plus. I'm glad it was free because honestly, in the end, I'm not sure that I would have wanted to pay too much for this particular museum. It wasn't very large, and in my opinion, there wasn't a great deal in there of what I think of as folk art. There were a few fun things though that I saw there. One was a quilt but it was made out of pieces of wool, and it was made by a sailor. Ironically, probably not an American sailor. It seemed to have been, nobody's quite sure about the provenance, but it seems to have been made by a British sailor. And he was depicting in this quilt scenes and ideas from his travels around the British Empire. And it was really a very interesting quilt and very detailed. Everything was cut out of wool. And so there were like hundreds of these little flowers, little daisies that he had cut out of white wool with the petals and cut out the petals. And then he had cut out little yellow circles to make the little daisy flowers. So intricate details like that and layers of the wool on top of each other. So intricate, hard to believe that a sailor did it. It was really actually quite incredible. And that was my favorite piece there, probably. There was also next to it another textile blanket. That one was woven, and I'm not sure when it was woven, when it was from, I actually forget that, but it had a lot of American symbolism woven into it, like buildings in Boston and Philadelphia that are symbolic of American freedom and the Revolutionary era, etc. So that was another really cool thing to see. But besides that, there was not a lot there, and a lot of it was, I'm not lying here, a lot of the rest of it was actually made by inmates of a variety of different insane asylums throughout the 18th and 19th centuries, throughout the 19th and 20th centuries, particularly early to mid 20th century art. And it just wasn't very refined, honestly. Some of them, in fact, I felt like I could replicate on the spot myself with the most basic of materials. And I get that it was very much an expression of those people's inner turmoil and mental anguish and the things that they struggled with. So I get that. In that sense, I agree it is art. However, it just wasn't very visually interesting or appealing or even complex in some cases. Now, not all of them. Some of them were. Some of them took a great deal of talent. Some of them took a great deal of intricate thought. There was layering and there was complexity to the art, and some of it was, interesting to look at. But even a lot of those, they were like fever dream art kind of thing. It was not to my taste. Not to say that it wasn't good. It just that those ones were not to my taste. Some of it just wasn't good. A lot of it just wasn't to my taste. So that was a bit of a disappointment, but it was free. So who can complain? Not me. I'm not complaining at all. My husband and I have decided that the Lincoln Center Plaza area, that area of New York City, which is just west of the southern part of the Central Park, we really enjoyed it. It's our favorite place of the place. Well, okay. There are other places that we really love in New York City and the environs that we have really enjoyed a lot. But we definitely enjoyed our time in that area. There's not a huge amount to see. So, it's not going to take a whole day to see everything that there is to see in that area. But it was beautiful. It was open. There was a lot of open spaces. It didn't feel crowded like much of the city does. It was not overwhelmed with tourists. It was honestly relatively quiet compared to the rest of the city. And it's right next to Central Park. So you can easily go into Central Park and enjoy the peace and the quiet of Central Park area as well. So we loved this part of the city. And it's kind of a whole complex there with various theaters, and Juilliard is there as well. So there are theaters associated with Juilliard, and then there's Lincoln Center that has multiple theaters, and then there's the Met Opera House, and then there's the New York Public Library of Performing Arts. More on that in a minute. And then in the center of all of them is a square, and there are multiple different portions of that square. In the center, there is a fountain that looks like they have light shows at night sometimes. And then there's a square around it where people do like outdoor performing arts, which actually while we were there, we saw a group and they were practicing for performance later in the evening. And then when we had finished with our show and we were heading out of the area, they were actually doing the performance. And so it was just a free outdoor summer performance. I think they do something called Summer in the City in the Lincoln Center Plaza area. So they have a lot of outdoor performances. They also have almost an amphitheater where it built into the grass where you can just relax and spend the day. Or I think they also do shows where you can sit there and watch from the amphitheater. So just a really beautiful area, a great place to relax. They also had a little free library, which was fun as well. I didn't take anything, although there might have been one or two things I would have been interested in, but I felt a little weird as a tourist taking anything, and I couldn't leave anything behind. So I just left what was there, but it was fun to see the little free library in the Lincoln Center Plaza. I've been to multiple libraries in New York City. I've been to the main New York Public Library near Bryant Park, which is just an incredible piece of architecture. They also have museum exhibits in there, and they have a fantastic shop. I love the New York Public Library. I would love to go back again for a longer period of time. I have several years ago, but on our recent trips to New York City, I've only like kind of popped in and out. So I would love to go spend more time there again and just enjoy the architecture and go through the museum exhibits, which do change periodically. So anyway, I love the New York Public Library, but we did not go to that library this time. I also have been to the Morgan Library, which is amazing as well. And across the street from the New York Public Library, the historic building, is the modern building where people actually check out books, where's the circulation. I've been there as well, and that's fun too. This time around, I went to the New York Public Library of Performing Arts, which is in the complex at the Lincoln Center Plaza. And that was so fun. They also have some exhibits, more on that in a second. But my favorite part was just walking through the stacks of sheet music, like stacks and stacks and stacks of sheet music, just sheet music. I have never been to a public library with such an extensive collection of sheet music. What? It was so fun. And so I would just pick up some pieces and flip through it and look at it. Oh my goodness. I could have spent much more time there, but we didn't have all day. They also own, and they have on display there at that library, one of the only extant copies of the first edition of the Star-Spangled Banner. There are only 11 known copies still in existence, and they own one of them. And that was so fun to look at. There are some slight differences actually in the rhythm and the melody, the way we sing it now. I don't know when those changes occurred. I'm curious as to how that happened, but it was fun to look at that sheet music. And also it was in the key of C. Normally we sing it in the key of A flat or A, and some people sing in G as well. And I was like, wow, that's really high. So anyway, that was fun to see. Really enjoyed that. And then they also have several exhibits. One was a ballet exhibit, which we did not go to. Another one was called The Mystery and Wonder, which was a temporary exhibit about, well, I think all of the exhibits are temporary, like they change it out periodically. But it was about the golden era of magicians and magic shows in the United States around the turn of the 20th century. And they just had books and materials that you could, well, some of them were behind in cases. And they had pictures and artifacts from that golden era of magic in the United States. And so like they had the accoutrements, what a magician would use to ply their trade for a show, for a magic show. And they also had some handcuffs that belonged to Harry Houdini. They actually had quite a few things by that were related to Harry Houdini there, which I thought was so fascinating, especially because Harry Houdini is a character in the show we were going to see, which is Ragtime. More on that in a second. I'm getting there. So anyway, we really had fun walking through this exhibit. We didn't examine everything closely. Magic shows aren't something that is of particular interest to us, but Harry Houdini has always fascinated me. And so I was enjoying reading everything there that was related to him. And also just generally speaking, that era of magic and magic shows was interesting. They had posters from that era as well. So we had fun there at that library. And so we get to the show, Ragtime. You might remember I recently tried to read the book a second time and I gave up on it a second time. The book is not to my taste, even though there's a part of me that feels like, you know, maybe I should just suck it up and finish it because I think there's a lot to the book that I would enjoy, but I have DNF'd it probably forever. but the show is amazing. I love the show. The show Ragtime is, and the book, is set at the turn of the 20th century in America. It uses the popular music of the day, which was ragtime, to highlight the rapidly changing social and cultural dynamics of the country at the time. And it's just done so exquisitely. I love it. The prologue of the show is one of the best, in my opinion, one of the best opening numbers, where they introduce all the characters and they introduce the themes and they introduce the ideas. From the music to the costuming to the blocking on the stage to the stage set to all of it. It just perfectly encapsulates not only what is to come in the musical, but the overall themes and ideas. Like visually, you get it. Orally, you get it. Like it's just perfect. I love it. I love the prologue. I love a lot of the musical numbers in it, but the prologue is just, it blows me away. And I did not expect to be as excited as I was at the very beginning when, the stage has an opening where a couple of different places where, it lifts or it can sink. I don't know what it's called, but it's like a portion that moves up and down of the stage. And so at the very beginning of the show, most of the cast is underneath the stage, and then it opens and they rise up out of the center. And just seeing that live, there was just, I don't know, there was something about that moment that I was like, oh, I'm really here. This is really happening. And this is so cool. I love this. So I really enjoyed the show. I was very excited because this particular show, this revival of Ragtime, which initially was produced in 1997, I think, and this is a revival of that show. This revival won 4 different Tony Awards this year, the 2026 Tony Awards, including Best Revival of a Show, but also 2 of the actors won Tony Awards. One of them was Joshua Henry, who played the character of Coalhouse Walker, who is a central figure in the story. And I was so looking forward because I had seen video clips of Joshua Henry singing and playing this part, and his voice was just so powerful. I was so excited to see him in person, and I was not disappointed. And I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce her name, Casey Levy. I don't know. She played the character of Mother, and she also won a Tony Award for her performance, which was very good as well. So I was so excited to see them perform, particularly Joshua Henry, and they did a fantastic job. The whole cast was really very good. It was amazing watching them and hearing them sing in person. I had multiple emotional moments and a couple of different goosebump moments. One of them was at the end of a song, Till We Reach That Day, which is somewhat in the style of Negro spiritual / Black gospel. It's kind of in that style. And the Black community, because there's, in this story, in Ragtime, there's a white group of people, and then there's an immigrant group of people, and then there's a Black group of people. And there's a lot of interplay. Again, this is highlighting the changing cultural and social dynamics of America at the turn of the 20th century. So these different groups of people are learning how to interact with each other. At the beginning, they're kind of just all in isolation, and they're keeping each other at arm's length and kind of looking askance at each other, and there's tension. And so they're learning how to kind of meld to become the melting pot that is America. And of course, it's still not perfect, right? But a lot of that happened at the beginning of the 20th century. This song that I'm talking about, the Black community portion of the cast is singing this song primarily and in this style of Negro spiritual / Black gospel. And oh my word, the chills, the goosebumps at the end. The primary singer who was singing it, she was the soloist at the beginning, and she was carrying the song for the most part. Oh my word. Wow. Just incredible, her singing. And obviously she was very much emotionally into it. I love how Broadway actors and opera singers, how they can do that. They can just get into it every single time they get out there and sing it. Or at least you feel like that when you're watching it. That they're not just out there delivering it once again, for the 1000th time. They're in it, and they're emotionally invested and involved in singing this. And you could feel it, and she did amazing. Oh my word, I can't even express how incredible the singing was at that point in time in the show. So I actually got a couple souvenirs at the show. The first one was, initially I was not going to get this. At the concession stand, they had a variety of drink options that you could get, but when I saw the price list, it was ridiculously expensive, like crazy expensive. And even though I was dying of thirst at the moment, I was like, I'm not spending that money for this. But then my husband went out later to use the restroom, and then when he was out there, I guess he asked, and he realized that it was significantly cheaper than I had thought for some reason. So he was able to get me a drink, which was their mocktail option, which had like candied orange syrup and lavender, I think, in seltzer water. So it was so good. Delicious. So I got this travel mug with this is the logo for the revival. And then I purchased at the souvenir shop this coffee mug, again with the logo there, and it says Lincoln Center Theater on the back. So that was my main souvenir for the day. I hate these kind of lids. They're so hard to clean, especially when you drink coffee. But anyway, so coffee with cream at any rate, it just gets in there. It's very difficult to clean, but all the same, I do like this travel mug that I got there. And they also had this magazine that you could take for free. And this is actually one of the best magazines that I've ever picked up at a performance anywhere in my whole life, because it has really thoughtful, well-written, well-researched articles about a variety of topics that related specifically to the show that we were seeing. When does that happen? It doesn't happen. I found myself reading this while we were waiting for the train to go home in the evening, and it was so interesting and so fascinating. In particular, there was an article about one of the inspirations for E.L. Doctorow to write his book, The Ragtime. And I did not know this. So he wove actual historical people and events into his story. His source of inspiration was actually a book called Michael Kohlhaas, and it was in a novella published in 1810 by German writer Heinrich von Kleist. And Michael Kohlhaas was the inspiration for the character Coalhouse Walker in Ragtime. So the story of Michael Kohlhaas, it's historical fiction, so it was set in the 16th century in Germany, and it follows the titular horse dealer, a man who, after being swindled by a corrupt nobleman, sets out to reclaim what's rightfully his. But when the legal system fails him, his quest for fairness turns into an all-out rebellion, leading to a violent crusade against the ruling elite. Coalhouse is both hero and villain, an ordinary man who wants justice but is consumed by his own need for revenge. In Coalhouse, righteousness and destruction are hopelessly entangled. And so E.L. Doctorow takes that idea. It says, by reframing the story within the context of race and power in America, Doctorow gives Coalhouse's struggle new resonance. This isn't just about one man's vendetta, it's about an entire rigged system. Ultimately, it says, Ragtime and Michael Kohlhaas are stories about what happens when the social contract fails, when a system built to ensure justice instead perpetuates oppression. Kleist's 19th century tale of rebellion finds new life in Doctorow's America, and then again on the Broadway stage, proving that the fight for justice, righteous, misguided, or otherwise, is a story that never stops being relevant. And so that was just a really interesting article, and now I've added another book to my TBR if I can find a Michael Kohlhaas in English, which presumably I can. I don't know if E.L. Doctorow spoke German, but I'm guessing he was able to read it in English in order to be inspired to write his story, Ragtime. Ragtime I wasn't able to finish, but maybe I can read Michael Kohlhaas. There were other interesting articles in that magazine as well, but that is enough about that. So that was Ragtime. Amazing. 10 out of 10. Highly recommend. To wrap up our day in New York City, as we were leaving the theater, we saw that the Met Opera House had a gift shop, and we were like, I was like, okay, I want to go with a gift shop at the Met Opera House. And so that was totally fun. More on that in a second. But while I was browsing the gift shop, my husband decided to use the restroom. And in order to get to the restroom, he had to go into the bowels of the Met Opera House. And while he was there, he saw that they had an exhibit as well, similar to the exhibits that were in the New York Public Library adjacent to the Met Opera House. They were closed at that point, so you couldn't see the exhibits. They were closed for the day, but you could see through the glass windows, what the exhibit consisted of, and it was costumes from operas held, famous operas at the Met Opera House. So when he came back upstairs, he was like, "Hey, you're gonna want to go see this." So it was a little awkward, but we retraced his steps and went and saw those costumes, and that was a lot of fun. But the actual gift shop at the Met Opera House was also a lot of fun. So let's take a look at what they had on offer there. So to finish out our day, my plan had been for us to finish off with a meal of some New York pizza from one of the many pizza stands that they have there. And so I had found one that was close to the train station, but in the end, we came across a different one and we ate there instead, which was fine. It was pretty good. It wasn't the best New York pizza we've had, but it was pretty good. So then there was another coffee shop that I wanted to try that had gotten really good reviews and had been highly recommended by actual people on the internet as a great new up-and-coming coffee place. And so it was just another block away from the train station. But we had a little bit of an adventure at this point, a very New York sort of adventure. So we were walking down and there was this one block, and honestly, it was just one side of the street. It was a pretty big street. We were walking down, I can't remember if it was 7th or 8th. Just one side of it was like very seedy, and like the businesses were boarded up, and there was a lot of homeless people gathering there, and people who were obviously under the influence of something or other. So we were like, okay. So we were walking down that street and on the sidewalk, and then ahead of us, there was a homeless person who was very high on something, and all of their belongings were like covering the sidewalk, and there wasn't really a good place for us to walk. We would have to step over their stuff. Plus they were behaving somewhat erratically, and so we stepped into the street to avoid that person, and we were going forward, and it didn't immediately click that we had stepped into the bike lane. And so this person is coming towards us on their bike and was very irritated with us, understandably, for being in the bike lane. And so he starts yelling at us, like yelling mad at us. And we were like, ooh. And thankfully, someone else who was another pedestrian who was on the street next to us, well, they were on the sidewalk, but they were next to us. They were like, relax, buddy. And it was like, thank you for standing up for us. Anyway, so At that point though, we were able to get back on the sidewalk. So we got back on the sidewalk. But then when we started to, like, we crossed the street where we needed to go to get to the coffee shop, I could not see the coffee shop from where we were, but I could see that it was more of the same. And there was this guy who was crossing the street with us who kept looking at us balefully, like he was gonna get us for impeding the bike lane. He wasn't the biker, but it was like he had seen it and he was like irritated with us. And so I was like, I don't need to go to this coffee shop. And my husband was like, you sure? And I was like, yes, I'm very sure. I'm very sure we do not need to go to this coffee shop. So I still don't know exactly where it was. Like I saw where it was on the map, but I did not see it on that street from where we were standing. And so, yeah, we just retraced our steps, but on the opposite side of the street, which oddly enough was perfectly fine. We had no issues. So we went back to the train station and I got my coffee at the train station from a chain, which again, like normally I like to go to a local place, hence our adventure, but it was fine. And we also got some dessert from the Magnolia Bakery there at the train station. So that was fun. So that was my trip to New York City, my little mini vlog about the day that we had. Thanks for traveling with me. I hope you had a fun time. Let me know in the comments if you've ever been to New York City and what is your favorite musical if you like musicals. If you don't like musicals, don't tell me because I don't want to hear it. All right? Y'all have a lovely day and I will see you next time. Bye.